Gentlemen, welcome to our introduction to photosynthesis. Basically, how we get food and how food is made for us. So we have a very basic question that we need to have answered. How do plants and other organisms capture energy from the sun? That's a great question. And it's a very complicated process, but it's a very noteworthy process. Obviously, without it, we would not survive. And we're not going to get too much in depth in it, spend a lot of time on it, but it's very important that you understand how plants and other organisms get energy from the sun. To begin with, we're just going to speak a little bit about what we call energy and life. How do things survive? How do things work with food or need food? Great movie, huh? How do things obtain energy? And where does it come from? Etc., etc. Homeostasis is hard work. It requires great amounts of energy. So it takes a lot to keep us who we are, whether it be a single-cell organism or a great gorilla or a giraffe, us, whatever it happens to be. Incredible amount of energy to keep balance, to maintain homeostasis. And what is energy? Energy is the ability to do work. When we think of work, we talk about studying, we talk about walking, weightlifting, playing a game, talking. Anything we do, anytime we're expending any kind of energy, at least in a human sense, we're talking about the ability to do work, whatever that work is. There's a different definition in physics that we will not go into, but when we talk about energy now, we're talking about the ability to do work. And different types of energy or energy-containing compounds that we think of, food, obviously to fuel our bodies. Octane is also commonly referred to as gasoline. Coal is used for many power plants to produce electricity to run our games, our homes, appliances, etc. And we also have nuclear fusion. With a question mark. So very simply, lads, nuclear fusion. Look at that, huh? Very special. Very, very, very special. Is what happens when a molecule of deuterium, which is this little guy right here, and a molecule of tritium, which is this guy right here, they're isotopes of hydrogen. Under tremendous heat and pressure, they come together. They form a very common substance that we're used to called helium, which is this thing right here, and a neutron, which is this thing right here. But most importantly for our needs, you like that? That changes color over there like that. Energy. Energy, energy, energy. And where does this occur? For us, it occurs on the sun. That flaming gas ball that is 8 minutes away by at the speed of light, 92 million miles away, at the average distance from the Earth. So, very important here. Now, specifically, what are we talking about here? We are talking about what we call a photon. This energy up here that we have mentioned is in the form of what we call a photon, which is a little packet of energy or light that is released as energy that we see from the sun, also emitted from light bulbs, burning candles, etc. So anything that gives off light is actually releasing little packets of energy, and this shouldn't say energy at all, it should say light. So I apologize for that, making a correction as we move along here. There we go. So it's released as light, and it's a little photon, and it's just a little packet of energy. And we see it as what we call visible light. That's the white light that comes down from the sun, what goes through a prism. We see the Roy GBIV, if you remember that from way back when. There are other types of, this is all electromagnetic radiation, there are other types, radio waves we can't see, microwaves we can't see, infrared we can't see without special goggles, certain filters we can put on cameras, etc. to see ultraviolet light. Obviously we can't see X-rays, nor can we see gamma rays. We see this very narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum known as the visible spectrum. And that's our ability, that's what gives us our ability to see the different things that we can see from the light provided by mostly by the fusion from the sun. So once again, fusion, let's go back up. Fusion on the sun creates helium and energy. We'll worry about that neutron some other year. Energy in the form of a photon. Photon is part of what we call the visible light spectrum that we can see in our everyday life. Let's look at something a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to understand. Candle wax, C32H64. That's the molecule that makes up candle wax. Combines with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water, and it loses energy, right? You all lit a candle, you know a candle burns. We see the light and we see the heat that are given off by a candle. The light and the heat that are given off by the candle. So anything that burns, energy lost is generally in the form of heat and light. So let's talk about energy that we need. Living things like me, believe it or not, I am living. We need fuel, food that ultimately is glucose. And glucose is turned into, in your body, the energy from that glucose is turned into what's called adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. Tri meaning 3, phosphate means it has 3 phosphate groups. You've probably heard of it, ATP. That is the molecule that our bodies use for energy. And here is an ATP molecule. This big honking thing over here is known as adenosine, and each one of these PO4s is known as a phosphate group. 1, 2, 3, adenosine triphosphate. And I apologize, when I write, these little random red dots show up, and I don't know why, but they just do. Lots of things randomly show up. So mea culpa on that. But it's adenosine triphosphate, ATP, 3 phosphate groups attached to an adenosine molecule. And all the chemical energy that we need is stored in the bonds, chemical bonds, not James Bond, not Barry Bonds, not hydrogen bond, but chemical bonds. So that's where the energy is. So up in here, the energy is actually between all these different phosphate groups. It's where the energy is stored. And as we add or remove, we either take away or add energy to our molecule, and that's how your body basically utilizes energy. In a much more simplified schematic, we call this the adenosine here, and each one of these is a phosphate. Interesting. And the breakdown of the adenosine triphosphate to what we call ADP, adenosine di meaning 2, diphosphate, and a phosphate group releases energy. And this is the energy that your cell in the and by the way, this happens in the mitochondria. This is where the energy is produced to do work, whatever that work might be. Thinking, standing, sitting, whatever it can be. Now here's the cool thing. When we eat food, we reverse this reaction. So we go from ADP back over to ATP by putting energy in, and that's why we eat food. We eat food to allow energy back into our bodies. We'll talk more about how that all works later. To restore ADP and phosphate back into ATP so we can do more work. It's cyclical. That's all it is a cycle. It goes from ATP to ADP, releasing energy. We eat, we add that energy, we put those back together, get ATP, and we just keep going around and around and around. The body actually has Body actually has very little ATP in it. It just keeps rebuilding it, putting it back together for that cycle. As you're going to learn, lads, a lot of things are cyclical in our body, very cyclical. So we don't need much because we're very efficient and able to keep reproducing our ATP from the ADP and phosphate that we have. Just keeps recycling. Cycle, cycle, cycle. That's the beauty of it. Now, we have two types of organisms. We have things that are known as heterotrophs. Heterotrophs, hetero means self, or I'm sorry, different means different. Hetero means different. Troph means to feed. So this means different feeder. And as you can see, our Tamia striatus here with this nice little puffy cheeks filling up with corn kernels. We got a nice old Kodiak or grizzly bear here that's all kinds of skinny, eating a salmon taken out of the river. And then we got Johnny Barbecue here eating a boar or something. He's put a little bit of sauce on, he's saucing up. He's a heterotroph as well. What that means is they get their food from other sources. This guy's eating high off the hog. He's eating fish. This guy is eating corn. Autotrophs, auto means self, and troph again means feeder. So these are self-feeders. These this isn't very good. It's a new computer, lads. I'm working on it. Self-feeders. All right, these are self-feeders. They use the sun's energy. Photons. Photons come in, absorbed by these organisms. And down here we have an algae getting photons, and they make their own food. They do not, plants don't barbecue. All right? They make their own food from photons from the sun, and we'll talk more about that with chlorophyll, and they make their own food, self-feeders, and then we've selectively bred some to make these beautiful, gloriously delicious tomatoes, etc., apples. Well, this is field corn. I wouldn't probably eat that. But fish, who knows what that was eating? Other things, which ate other things, which ultimately, though, everything that is here depended at some level in its life on an autotroph, something that got its food energy from the sun. All right, lads, that's all I got for today. I will see you tomorrow in class. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of rambling, shambling thing that I've thrown together. Thank you.